OpenAI has trained an AI to attack other AIs and says it already finds attack paths humans had never seen. Welcome back to Midnight Signal AI. It's July 16th, 2026.
Today, how GPT-Red became OpenAI's sparring partner for GPT 5.6, a pledge from Elon Musk after the Grok backlash, and a 975 billion parameter open model entering the frontier race.
Let's start with the system behind that first claim. MIT Technology Review reports that OpenAI built GPT-Red, an LLM designed to red team other models. It tries to break, hijack, or manipulate them before users encounter the weaknesses.
The key distinction is that this is not a conventional safety filter checking a completed answer. GPT-Red is trained to generate the adversarial situation itself. In OpenAI's setup, it attacks several other models, while those models learn to defend themselves over repeated rounds.
OpenAI focused much of that work on prompt injection. That is the attack where malicious instructions are slipped into text an AI system reads, inside a web page, a document, or code, and the system follows them instead of the user's intended task.
And that becomes materially more dangerous with agents. A chatbot giving a bad answer is one failure mode. An agent that can read company files, browse sites, call third-party tools, and then obey a hidden instruction has a much wider blast radius, as OpenAI researcher Mikhail Khanpal put it.
MIT Technology Review says OpenAI began with an LLM that was not trained as a hacker. Researchers placed it into a self-play loop where its job was to compromise other models and their job was to resist. The company says GPT-Red has produced new attack types not previously observed.
That claim needs outside testing because finding novel attacks in a lab does not automatically prove resilience in customer environments, but the mechanism is notable. Safety work stops being a fixed checklist and becomes an adversary that can improve alongside the model being defended.
OpenAI says training against GPT-Red helped make GPT 5.6 its most robust release yet. The practical question is whether that robustness survives the messy inputs agents meet in production: internal documents, vendor tools, public web pages, and instructions written specifically to fool them.
It also changes the economics of red teaming. Human specialists remain essential for judgment and unusual threat models, but an automated attacker can run continuously. That could make security evaluation less of a last-minute release gate and more like the automated testing developers already use for code.
OpenAI researchers say the point is to future-proof testing before more capable models arrive. If that works, the race is no longer merely to build agents that can act, it is to build defenders that can imagine the actions those agents should refuse.
That is a sharper safety benchmark than polished demos. The useful measure will be whether GPT-Red catches failures before customers do, and whether OpenAI publishes enough evidence for outside researchers to assess those claims.
Switching to XAI, the American Bazaar reports that Elon Musk has pledged to make X open source following backlash involving Grok. The report frames the promise as a response to criticism over how the AI system has been handled on the social platform.
The important qualifier is that the supplied report gives no timetable, license, repository, or definition of what X would include. Open source can mean anything from a narrow component release to a maintained codebase that outsiders can actually run and audit.
That ambiguity matters because the political value of the pledge is immediate, while the technical value depends on the details. A public repository can expose how some systems work. It does not by itself reveal training data, operational policies, or every production service around them.
And after AI backlash, transparency is only one piece of accountability. Users and regulators will look for concrete controls, enforcement, and evidence that harmful uses are being detected. Open code could help independent scrutiny, but it is not a substitute for those operational choices.
Speaking of access to major platforms, Tech Times reports that the European Union has forced Meta to reopen WhatsApp to ChatGPT following what it describes as a rare antitrust order. The immediate issue is whether a dominant messaging service can block a competing AI assistant from access.
The report's broader signal is that AI distribution is becoming an antitrust question. Models may be powerful, but the winning assistant also needs a place where people already communicate. A messaging app is not just another integration, it can be a daily default interface.
we should be careful with the available reporting. The headline provides the order's claimed outcome, but not its full legal terms, dates, or implementation mechanics. Those details will determine whether this is broad interoperability or a tightly constrained access arrangement.
Still, if regulators can compel access in this setting, platform owners face a different calculation. Keeping a rival assistant out of a major channel may no longer be treated simply as a product decision, when that channel is central to how users reach digital services.
Now to a cleaner model launch. Wired reports that Thinking Machines Lab has released Inkling, its first model, a 975 billion parameter open-source system trained to understand video and audio. It's the lab's opening bid against companies including OpenAI and Anthropic.
975 billion parameters is an enormous number, but it's not the verdict. Wired's report makes the strategically relevant point. Inkling is trained across video and audio, and it's open source. That gives researchers and developers a route to inspect and adapt it, rather than only rent an API.
For Thinking Machines, this is also a credibility test. A first release has to establish more than raw scale. Developers will want to know how the model performs on real video and audio tasks, what hardware it requires, and what the open source terms permit.
The contrarian angle is that open source may matter most as distribution, not charity. If Inkling becomes a common base for specialized tools, Thinking Machines gains mindshare and an ecosystem, even if many users never run all 975 billion parameters themselves.
Wired places the lab directly alongside Anthropic and OpenAI. Those firms have stronger consumer products and enterprise channels, so Inkling's path is likely through builders who value control over multimodal systems rather than a polished general-purpose assistant.
Watch for independent evaluations rather than parameter count headlines. Video and audio understanding are full of edge cases, timing, context, background sound, and ambiguous visual evidence. A frontier-scale open model only becomes consequential if it handles those better than accessible alternatives.
On the political front, Wired reports that OpenAI employees have donated more than $215,000 to a political effort opposing Leading the Future, a group backed by OpenAI President Greg Brockman. The rival effort is called Guardrails Alliance.
That's a concrete sign that the AI policy fight isn't neatly split between companies and critics. It's also happening inside frontier labs, where employees can disagree with leadership about the political vehicles and guardrails that should shape the industry.
The $215,000 figure is specifically donations to the effort opposing Leading the Future, according to Wired. It doesn't tell us every policy position at stake, but it does show staff members putting money behind a separate organized voice, rather than treating corporate leadership as their proxy.
For lawmakers, that could complicate the usual corporate lobbying map. A company's executives may argue one case, while current employees, who work closer to the systems, finance another. The value of that split depends on whether either group offers specific, testable policy proposals.
Finally, Reuters, The Verge, and Al Jazeera all report the same underlying development. xAI has sued a user it alleges exploited Grok to generate sexualized deepfakes involving minors. The case puts platform safeguards and user accountability in the same courtroom.
The reporting describes allegations, not a judicial finding, and that distinction matters. But the suit is significant because it shifts part of the response from moderation policy into legal accountability for an alleged user who bypassed or exploited an AI tool.
As we reported in our July 15th episode, xAI's Grok ecosystem was already under pressure after this abuse issue emerged. What's new here is the company's lawsuit, reported by Reuters, The Verge, and Al Jazeera, against an alleged individual user.
A lawsuit can deter some behavior, but it can't be the primary safety mechanism. The human stakes are immediate. When sexualized material involving minors is generated or spread, the essential product question is how quickly a platform prevents generation, detects abuse, and removes material.
The court process may reveal more about the alleged method and xAI's claimed safeguards. Until then, the case is a reminder that model providers are being judged not only on what their systems can create, but whether their controls work when someone deliberately tries to cause harm. Okay, that's the heavy stuff. Let's hand the mic to Nova and Kai for what else is moving.
Thanks, Alex. All right, a few signals from beyond today's headlines. Now let's shift gears to robotics. Live Science reports a robot dog is tackling stairs, forests, and log jumping after a rapid AI training approach taught it to handle rough terrain. The notable part is the breadth of movement. This is not a demo on a flat lab floor, but locomotion across obstacles that demand quick balance corrections.
That distinction matters. A quadruped that can recover from uneven ground has a much more plausible route into inspections, search work, or disaster zones than one tuned for a pristine warehouse. The next test is consistency. Repeated runs, bad weather, and unfamiliar terrain, or a single stumble can still end the mission.
On the medical front, data connectivity firm CData says it has extended its Connect AI platform for HIPAA-regulated healthcare. The announcement is about giving healthcare organizations a way to connect AI systems with governed data access under the sector's privacy requirements. A less flashy layer of the stack, but one that determines whether clinical AI can actually move from pilot to deployment.
Exactly. HIPAA is not a badge you add at the end. Health systems need controls around who can access data, how it moves, and what an AI workflow is allowed to retrieve. Tools that make those connections manageable could be consequential, even if they never appear in a patient-facing app.
And on the hardware side, reports from Android Headlines and Investopedia say Apple is quietly shopping for AI chip startups amid questions over whether its M2 Ultra is enough for the company's AI ambitions. Nothing has been announced, so treat this as acquisition chatter, but it points to the increasingly strategic value of specialized silicon as Apple weighs how much AI compute it wants to own.
Apple already designs a lot of its own silicon, so buying a startup would be less about getting a chip tomorrow and more about acquiring a team, architecture, or interconnect trick. For on-device AI especially, performance per watt can matter as much as raw benchmark speed.
And to end on a lighter note, TipRanks reports OpenAI topped 8 million active users across Codex and ChatGPT work in just 2 days. The figure bundles a coding product with its workplace offering, so it is more of a momentum snapshot than a clean consumer user count, but it is still a strikingly fast adoption signal for AI tools aimed at getting work done.
8 million people showing up that quickly is one thing. Getting them to keep using the tools after the novelty wears off, that is the real productivity benchmark. Still, that is a very crowded first stand-up meeting. And that wraps our signals from beyond the front page. The final word, as always, goes to the signal.
Every age builds new doors, then discovers the doors can answer back. The printing press scattered arguments across continents. Tonight, the arguments are learning to knock. History will not ask whether we opened them. It will ask what we invited inside.